Good evening. We're going to get started. Today is October 17th, 2022, and welcome to the Burlington City Council meeting. Thank you for joining us in person in Contois and online for our meeting. The time is 6:50. Before we get started with the council meeting and motion to adopt the agenda, just wanted to mention for the public and particularly for the parents of Champlain School, Champlain Elementary School students, that we just came back from a field trip where we saw the nature-based climate solutions that they've been working on, and saw lots of tree planting and stormwater and flood resilience and mitigation, and some local ecologically sound food production that they are working on. And we got a lot of treats from them, including these right here, which are homemade apple crisps from Champlain Elementary. It was a wonderful opportunity for us to see what's going on this front, not just because we're, of course, concerned about emissions, but we're also concerned the other side of the equation in our climate emergency, which is investing in projects that are high on impact and low on cost. And that's what we saw today. So thanks so much to Zoe Richards, who's the chair of the Burlington Conservation Board, Parks and Rec Department. We had Dan Cahill, Patrick Dunseith, Rebecca Roman, Dan Rogers, a number of community partners, and again, the students at Champlain's, the fifth grade class, one of the fifth grade classes at Champlain Elementary, and their amazing teacher, Aziza Malik. With that, we'll call to order the council meeting and a motion to adopt the agenda. How do you feel about reading that? Okay, Councilor Hightower.
Move to amend and adopt the agenda as follows. Add to the consent agenda item 6.31, communication from Robert Bristow Johnson regarding Burlington 8 wards version 16 PDF. Add to the consent agenda item 6.32, communication from Sinead Murray, Ward 8 Inspector of Elections regarding resignation. Add to consent agenda item 6.33, communication Daniel Gaviria regarding trash and syringes in Callahan Park, and I apologize for all of those mispronunciations.
Thank you, Councilor Hightower. There's a motion to approve with amendments our agenda. Is there a second to that motion?
I have a question regarding the deliberative item 7. Is it the 04, the parking minimums? Are we going to move that?
When we get to 7.04, Councilor Bergman, there will be a motion to postpone to a date certain.
Thank you.
Sure. So there is a motion. Is there a second to the motion? Seconded by Councilor McGee. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those, seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. We have an agenda. And just wanted to also clarify that Councilor Freeman is joining us via Zoom. The next item on our agenda is item number 2, which is a redistricting update and presentation. For this update, I'll turn to Councilor Barlow, who, together with Councilors Hightower, McGee, and Travers, have been working as a small group to forge a consensus on this wonderful topic of redistricting. Councilor Barlow.
Thank you, President Paul. The redistricting group met on September 21st and then again on October 3rd, and the trajectory of our discussions over those two meetings has been in the direction of an 8-ward map, as it can best achieve some of the objectives identified by the ad hoc committee and some of the public process that's gone on around redistricting, including keeping the New North End and Old North End separate. It also allows for the creation of a downtown ward, having multiple representatives for each resident, and can allow student populations to be better distributed across multiple wards. At the most recent meeting, we discussed 4 8-ward options that planning had created for us to review, and The two, I think, that are in our packet and are going to be shown tonight are the ones that the small group had the most consensus around. I'll also note that one of the items, one of the maps in that group has a variation that would, I think it's option 3, version 2, that would have allowed EMS also to stay within Ward 6 as a polling location. And lastly, I'll add another benefit of the 8-ward configurations are that they allow for either a 12 or a 16 counselor solution. So with that, I guess I would turn to Nancy Stetson for presentation.
Good evening, Nancy. Thanks for being here.
Hi, sorry, I probably should have already gotten set up, but 1 second. Okay. Oh. There we go. As Councilor Barlow said, I'm here to present on these options. I did have a short presentation. Councilor Barlow covered a lot of what I was going to go through, so I'll try to make it quick. I'm hoping that with this meeting, I can answer any questions I can answer here, and then also collect questions to bring back answers next week, I think was the plan. So first off, I just want to talk through what the working group did. If you want more information, you can go to the redistricting site on the Burlington website. There were 2 meetings. The first meeting was a general overview of the combinations of wards and counselors, the sort of pros and cons of each of those options, and going over what priorities had come up over the past year of working on this problem. And then on October 3rd, we looked through the 4 8-ward options. So this is a slide from the first meeting, just laying out the different options that had been discussed at City Council up until that point. And then I put together this matrix. The colors don't show great on that screen. The idea is to put all of the different combinations of counselors and wards in one place and compare them to the various priorities that have been put forth. One thing I would note is that the priorities aren't sorted and they're not necessarily of equal weight either, so it's up to the public and counselors to decide which priorities are most important to them. And the colors are also not set in stone. You might have a slightly different feeling about how the maps should fit. But this was just a way to talk through the different options that had been discussed. And as Councilor Barlow said, the counselors in the working group decided that an 8-ward map was the most feasible. So for the next meeting, I brought in 4 different options for an 8-ward map. As I was working through them, it became clear that there weren't as many variations that seemed reasonable. So these maps are actually all fairly similar. For example, the New North End doesn't change at all in any of them. The boundaries are quite close to what they currently are, and it's right along North Ave, so they felt pretty set. And then for each of the options, I shifted students from the athletic campus from Ward 6 into Ward 1, and that changed the boundaries of the other wards. So the 4 options we looked at are here. And from Ward 1, there's no athletic campus students. Or in option 1, there's no athletic campus students in Ward 1, and then option 4, the entire athletic campus is in Ward 1. So they sort of shift over. And from these 4, the 2 middle options were sort of decided on as the most feasible. These next 2 slides just show what the full map would look like with the population. For option 2 and option 3, as Councilor Barlow said, there is a slightly different version of option 3 where you can grab Edmonds from Ward 8 and keep it in Ward 6 if that's something that's important. And then the last thing I wanted to talk about was just how the students were divided between the wards. So you can see option 3 makes both Ward 6 and Ward 1 about half on-campus students. Again, it doesn't account for off-campus students, which we don't have very precise data on. So that is the whole presentation of what the working group did. And so now we're at this point where these are the 2 options. I would welcome any questions, but also suggestions for variations you'd like to see too. I'm sure you've seen other possible 8-ward maps, and so I'm curious what you'd like to be different about these.
Are there counselors, Counselor Hightower?
I have to admit, I'm part of the group, and I said some things during the meeting that I was apparently very wrong about how my constituents would feel. They are extremely unhappy with the proposed 8-ward maps. They feel they really wanted the 7-ward map and want us to go back to considering that. They feel strongly that they feel like everybody's getting what they want in terms of New North End being separate from the Old North End. And folks still getting the voting place that they want, and Ward 8 being reconfigured, and Ward 1 is the one who's losing on all of those fronts. So they felt very strongly that the historical character of the Old East End is east of Willard and north of Main Street, and to the extent possible that be maintained. So I got a lot of feedback at the NPA that folks did not love any of the maps.
Thanks, Councilor Hightower. As Nancy has said, this is really what we hope will be the second to last opportunity. We will have a work session on this at the next meeting. If there are concerns or if there are other maps that need to be brought forward, now would be the time to try to address those so that there's time to get that together for the work session. Councilor Shannon.
I just had a question about what Councilor Hightower just said. Looking at the WG option 2, it looked to me like that, I may not have the streets right, but it looked to me like that was north of Main Street and east of Willard. Is it not? If that's the criteria.
Sorry, so it is to some extent, but so for folks who are unfamiliar with Ward 1, that northwest section is our largest, I guess, single-family home block. So that's Henry. So it's kind of going to Prospect, then cutting across another. So it's cutting the northwest quadrant. Willard goes all the way to where the blue and green meet if you're looking at solely option 2. So option 3 then is just on Prospect, if that helps for reference.
Okay, so the concern is that section that's gone from Ward 1 into Ward 2, that's the concern for your constituents?
Yes,
Okay.
and again, I think there's been 2 concerns. One of them I brought up in terms of voting turnout is, again, because it's that is the single-family block, that is also the most vocal kind of constituency base that Ward 1 has. And so that specifically would be getting lost, and that's the highest voter turnout area of the city.
Thank you.
You okay? Thanks. Councilor Bergman.
So I'm sad about that, even though Ward 2 would go up it makes it more difficult. So I guess in terms of help, perhaps there is an 8-ward variation that could look at a map that would divide around North Street, and maybe it would even take both sides of North Street to keep it in Ward 1, and then I don't know where the other, the balloon needs to then move somewhere else, so I'm not sure exactly where that moves. Historically, Ward 2 had gone all the way to Main Street, so so you got Buell and Hungerford and College, so that's not out of the question in terms of where that balloon goes, and I am in favor of 10%. I would be in deviation. I'd be in favor of 10.1. I think that given the nature of this, we bring it to a judge, and we talk about the one person, one vote. I think we win. That's just my my opinion based on looking at case law over a long time, but I'm not your attorney. So that, something that would not move so much, but might be able to accommodate some of this balloon, making that bubble that you create with the balloon just a little bit smaller, but if you know what I mean on that.
I think so. I like the
Okay.
balloon analogy. I will just say, option 3 is at 10.0% deviation.
Right.
So we're really right on the line there.
I mean, I think that there's no magical formula, and I heard what the opinion was, and I think, I read it as us having a little bit more flexibility than it being an ironclad line. And I think we can, based on the conversation and based on the needs of the people, which is not about a discriminatory action, very valid in terms of keeping the integrity of neighborhoods and being clear about historic lines and all the other criteria there. I think that we can do that. I'm not advocating you go up to 13 or 14, although I've seen cases that have actually upheld that. And the state has had deviations which are significantly higher than 10%. So I caution us about hamstringing ourselves unnecessarily. But that being said, if there's a way to get it really close, that would be, I think, great. And that's my suggestion in terms of mapping for trying to move these lines. Because I like the 8 myself. I think it is the absolute best way that we can do the work that we need to do for the people of Burlington. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Bergman. Councilor Barlow.
Thank you, President Paul. During the working group, second working group session, we talked about, what's possible within the overall plan deviation of 10%. And one of the challenges with an 8-ward map is that Ward 1 is a 7th of the city. So something has to come from Ward 1 and go somewhere. And we talked about that specific neighborhood that Councilor Hightower talked about being displeased with these maps about. And we had talked about trying to keep them intact and not carve that neighborhood, though that particular north part of, is it the north? It's the west part, essentially, of Ward 1. We're trying to keep that intact. So I don't know if we can. I mean, I would like to hear more about our ability to, move the balloon around in a way so that we could keep that intact and stay within, some reasonable overall plan deviation.
I'm happy to go back and see what is possible in an 8-ward map. I do think if you're committed to keeping that neighborhood part of Ward 1, then Ward 1 likely won't take any of the athletic campus students. which I know we had talked about, where they end up is then Ward 6, and then Ward 6 has a lot of students. So I think that's the main trade-off that's happening. I don't think I would have to go back and look through all the maps to see if I've made a map like that. But I think that's the main challenge you'd be dealing with.
Thanks, Councilor Barlow. Are there others who have comments about this? Councilor Travers.
Well, to me, I think Nancy sort of identified one of the issues there, which is, what do we do with the athletic campus? What do we do with the other dorms? It seems like very early on in this process, we identified a desire to basically more fairly and more equitably divide the student population between wards, and for us to do away with the so-called student ward, which is the Salamander Ward 8, as it's called. A certain reality to that, though, is that if we are to do away with Ward 8 as it exists today, the student dorms, which make up, correct me if I'm wrong, by far and away the largest census blocks that we have, and I appreciate that you've made some effort here to divide the census blocks into the different campuses on UVM, but a certain reality here is that if we are doing away with a student ward, then the dormitories are going to have to go into one ward or the other. And I have strong concerns that if we simply move all of the dorms into Ward 6, or on the other side of things, if we were to move all of the dorms into Ward 1, that we're just creating the same problem that we were looking to do away with in the beginning of this in eliminating the so-called student ward that is Ward 8. So I don't know what the answer to that is necessarily, but I do think and I do appreciate that in the options that you have there, that when we look at geographically where the dorms are, if we're looking to get rid of Ward 8 as it exists now, some of those dorms are going to have to be in Ward 1, and some of those dorms are going to have to be in Ward 6. And the reality of that is that both of those wards are not going to be able to maintain the same historical boundaries that they've had. So if folks' interests are more so in maintaining historical boundaries of the wards, then I think a certain reality of that is that we're back to considering maintaining a student ward, so to speak. And what are the boundaries of that? I don't have the answer to that, but if councilors are going to prioritize maintaining historical boundaries, then I do think that that's a reality of all this, which is that one of our 8 wards is going to have to maintain a student population similar to Ward 8 is right now. And from the very beginning, we were saying that's not something we wanted to do. So I know this isn't our work session necessarily, but I do want to posit that for folks to think about. And Nancy, I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, or if you could speak to sort of how large these student census blocks are and the complications that it's presented for you as you've been drawing these different versions of the 8-ward map.
I mean, sure, what I can say is that the entire student population in that southern, sort of south of Main Street campus, Redstone and Athletic, is like 4,400 students. And we're looking at a total population of 5,500. So, I mean, so like, yes, we could put them all in a ward together. It would be a student ward. It's very similar to Ward 8, I think. So I think what you laid out there is correct. And we, figuring out how to split them is the main challenge.
You all set? Okay. Councilor Hightower.
Yeah, and sorry to speak again. I just know that this is drastically different from what we've talked about in the past, given the feedback that I was given. I do think that there is a version, just because the versions that we're looking at give so little of the student population to Ward 8, And that's not a huge concern of Ward 1. We actually didn't talk about it that much. I think they're more concerned about the historic boundaries. But I think that there's a version where Ward 8 still takes some of the athletic block without being just, I think before it took all of it, which was like, but in the versions that we're looking at, like some of the options have Ward 8 taking 5 or 16%. I think there's a version where it takes more of that, where it does get a little skinnier, but is still downtown to student, where it's maybe a little bit more balanced, because I know Ward 6 doesn't want to be the new 78% on-campus student wards. And again, I think that this is just Ward 1 looking at this, and we knew that on an 8-ward map we'd have to be carved out, but I think, or we'd have to lose something, but I think especially gaining 1,000 people across in what historically isn't part of it, to lose a whole nother 1,000 people, I think was a pretty hard hit for folks to see. And I think the one other thing that I want to mention, just because this was also part of the discussion, is my ward specifically has for a really long time been looking to have UVM be a better neighbor, and I know that's part of the discussion, and one of the things that was asked was, if we're getting more of the on-campus students and losing some more of the historic, the least we want the council to do is to really think about how to make UVM be a better neighbor. So I'm just saying that some of the other councilors can hear that.
Thanks, Councilor Hightower. Councilor Carpenter?
Hi, this is just more global, but we've talked so much about historic neighborhoods, which I support, but we just have to keep reminding ourselves that those are going to change some. And what really changed Ward 1 was the addition of all those new apartments. Ward 4 may change when Cambrian Rise is fully built out. The downtown ward will change when City Center gets built out. And so I just reminding our constituents that we talk about the redistricting balloon, but the growth balloon is unpredictable. So, and I think, we're not always going to be able to keep the districts the way they were. I mean, I've lived through several redistrictings and they're painful, but reminding our constituents that they change. I am not in particular opposed to the 7-ward map at all, and so I could reconsider it, but in terms of process and all the good work everyone's done, there seems to be more consensus around that 8-ward map. I'm not supportive of the 16 councilors, but I know there's a lot of work, good work that got us to where we are today.
Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. Councilor Shannon?
Thank you. So I did misunderstand the map, and Councilor Hightower's clarification of that is helping me understand what the issue is in Ward 1, and I think that it's a fair criticism. I don't think that as we go through redistricting, everybody can expect to be in the same ward and they get attached to the number of their ward, and I don't think that that's what's really important when we, take a step back and look more globally at our redistricting maps. But I do think that what Nancy just said about, the number of students versus the size of the entire ward, and particularly the dorms are very low voter turnout. They've just arrived on campus. They're also not really able to run for office because they're not going to be staying where they are very long. It becomes difficult to fill the positions, as it has been addressed with us several times. And so I think that one of the advantages we might get out of going to the 7-ward map is that the wards become larger then, and it's easier to absorb these large numbers of students while still having enough of a stable population that you can fill all of the positions and have a reasonable voter turnout. Because I also don't think that it's fair to people when one ward elects the same number of counselors with 300 votes as another ward can with 1,500 votes. There's a disparity there. I I wonder, when these maps are created, was there, I don't see what the population per ward is here, but it makes sense for those student wards to be on the larger side compared with, oh, there you have it. Okay, so I would think that there would be an advantage to having, 1 and 6 be on the larger side of the wards because they are trying to absorb this on-campus student population. And so, and that's not completely the case there, but that's my suggestion. I think looking at the 7-ward map again is reasonable, and I think as you're drawing lines to make wards 1 and 6, the larger wards also make sense.
I would, if I could just speak to that.
Of course.
Last point briefly. The one thing I would like to point out is that it's difficult to precisely move people because they're moving in blocks. And so you can see the largest ward and the smallest ward the difference is only about 600 people, and there's plenty of blocks that are that large. So making, we could put a few, another 100 or 200 people in Ward 6 to make it a slightly larger ward, but it's hard to find exactly that block that will fill that in. So it's just another challenge.
Thank you. Councillor McGee.
Thank you. Thanks, Nancy, for so many different iterations of these 8-ward maps. I really appreciate what's gotten us to this point and the effort that's gone into trying to address all of the concerns that people have with any number of these maps. And I certainly hear the concerns that Councillor Hightower's constituents have shared about no longer being part of Ward 1. And I think I'll take some credit or blame for getting us to this 8-ward conversation because many of my constituents reached out to me being concerned that they would no longer be part of the Old North End by being grouped into either Ward 4 or Ward 7. So I just want to remind everyone that that's, if we make this effort to address the concerns of one neighborhood, I will have constituents of my own that will reach out about that. So that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor McGee. Are there other councillors? Remember, we will also have a work session next week. Councillor Jang, did you want to speak?
Yes, very
Great.
quickly. Thank you, President. I was just wondering if the redistricting committee are also working on engaging the community.
I'm sorry, what?
Community engagement plan about this. Can they talk about that?
Were you asking that of the working group?
Yes.
Okay. Do you want to speak to that, Councillor Barlow?
We have had warned meetings, and so the public's been invited to give comment and participate in our meetings. But beyond that, we don't have public engagement plan. Much of the public engagement was done before we got to the stage of the working group.
Thank you. I think the other part of that also was the ad hoc group did have several public meetings. They did send out a survey. They had an online survey, and I think that was part of their charge as well. Please go ahead, Councillor Jang.
Yep. I mean, I think the concern here is every single time it changes, and it is changing because Councillor Hightower brought it to her constituents. There are many other constituents who do not even have any idea this is taking place. And from my perspective, it should be, the working group should look into that as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jang. Any others? So it looks like perhaps we will, I don't know, Councillor Hightower, was there anything on a possible 7-ward map that you wanted Nancy to look into between now and next week?
I mean, I think, oh my gosh, I guess, wondering if a 7-ward map is still on the table, I think more so than looking at iterations, and I think looking at an 8-ward map that maybe tries to put part of Athletic Campus into Ward 8, so that Ward 1 can retain as much of its, since 1960-something, historical boundaries as possible, to go to Willard.
Yes, I can do that one.
Okay.
Or at least
well,
try it. I can't promise.
Thank you. Anything else that, Counselor Barlow?
I
And
guess
then we'll go to
I
public
had a
forum.
clarifying question about a 7-word map. Would it be the sort of asymmetric 7-word map or a 7x14 that would be a more symmetrical map that you're interested in, Councilor Hightower?
Yeah, my constituents were interested in the symmetrical, the 7-ward, 2-counselor map.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I hope this was productive for you and getting ready for next week's meeting. As I said, the goal will be to try through a work session to come to a consensus on redistricting, giving the timelines for it to go to charter change and then come back and be on the ballot for town meeting day. We're getting close to when we really need to make a decision. And just want to thank the members of the working group, and thank you, Nancy, so much for all that you've done. We'll make every effort at our next meeting to get to the end game if we can. With that, we will. It's now about 7:25. We can close this item and go on to item 3.01, which is the public forum. We'll start a couple of minutes early. We do not, actually, we do have someone who just signed up for the public forum online. Before we begin public forum, just a few pieces of information. The table in front of us has three lights. The green light will shine when you begin speaking. The second, which is a yellow light, when you have 30 seconds left. And the last is a red light when we ask that you wrap up your comments. If you're in the middle of a sentence, of course, complete it, but then please close your remarks so that we give everyone the same amount of time. There's a hybrid system for public forum. If you wish to speak, you can go to Burlington. If you're online, if you're on Zoom, you can go to burlingtonvt.gov/public forum, fill out a form that will populate, and the form, the blanks, when you fill in those blanks will come into a spreadsheet that I can see. The order, the priority for those speaking in public forum is that Burlington residents have first priority. We'll go to the Burlington residents that are here in Contois, and then to the Burlington residents that are online, and then we will go to non-Burlington residents back in Contois, and then close with non-Burlington residents that are online. During public forum, the only request that we make is that you use respectful language. Please direct your comments to me as the chair and not to anyone else at this table. And please do not personalize your comments. We really want to hear what you have to say, and it's a lot easier to listen when you use respectful language. With that, we'll go to public forum. There are two people in Contois who are Burlington residents who would like to speak. The first is Robert Bristow Johnson, and the second is Lee Morgan. Hi, Robert.
Hello.
Welcome.
So this is about the topic that we just finished talking about. I'm going to push a little bit in the other direction. So there is a map, and it's item 631. It's an 8-ward map. Any 8-ward map can keep the new north end in the new north end wards in the new north end. That's because 24% of the city lives north of the Yankee Medical Building, all right? But you can do more with an 8-ward map if we don't waste it. And you can actually have an 8-ward map that keeps the new north end wards of the new north end and keeps the old north end wards in the old north end. You can have an 8-ward map that has a nice, clean line down the entirety of Pearl Street. But the price you pay, the problem is that none of these maps are easy, and we're figuring that out. The price that you have to pay for, you could also keep that neighborhood in Ward 1 together, but the price you pay is you have to move that entire neighborhood into Ward 2. But this map solves lots of problems. It solves the equal division of the student population between Wards 1 and 6. It keeps the old North End wards in the old North End. It has a downtown ward with an identifiable identity, I guess. It puts a lot of students in that downtown ward. It puts the entirety of the Champlain College into the Ward 8, the downtown ward. It puts the Buell-Bradley neighborhood into the downtown ward. It puts that Williams and Willard little block, that's solid students, of course, into the downtown ward. It also keeps the entire King Maple neighborhood together, puts it into the downtown ward, including Bob and Mill. It doesn't put a line down Maple Street. It does have a line on Maple Street, but not there. Anyway, everything between Maple and Pearl is downtown.
Thank you, Robert.
In that ward, or in that map.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Lee Morgan, to be followed by Eric Farrell. Hi, good evening.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Hi, my name is Lee Morgan. I'm a resident of Ward 7. As most of you know, there have been multiple recent events of transphobia in Burlington and in other Vermont cities and towns. I have been trans non-binary my entire life. Growing up trans is difficult, even with tremendous support. Without support and acceptance, it can be downright dangerous, as was my experience. I moved to Burlington solely because of how I felt visiting for the first time from out of town for a job interview. Coming from a very conservative area, I made my decision to move to Burlington between the time it took to walk from the parking garage to my interview. I will always love Burlington for giving me back a part of myself I lost a long time ago. For the record, I could first put into words my feelings about my gender when I was 5 years old. 32 years later, those feelings have not changed at all. Here's what I'm asking from you tonight. I'm asking the council, along with Mayor Weinberger, to recognize at the city level the National Transgender Day of Visibility on March 31st. I'm asking you to reach out to your constituents with your solidarity and provide contact information for trans support organizations. I'm asking that when transphobia arises, address it. I do just want to quickly recognize Councilor Carpenter, who did just that. I think it was back in the summertime. Those transphobic stickers popped back up in the New North End. And by various outlets, Councilor Carpenter addressed that, made it very clear that that is not who the New North End is, and it's not who she is, and offered support to trans people who needed to reach out, and also kind of started citizens organizing to safely remove the stickers, and that made us feel safe and heard, and that matters. Thanks.
Thank you so much. Our next speaker is Eric Farrell, to be followed by Nick Kavanaugh. Hi, Eric. Good evening.
Hi. How are you all? I'll be very brief. I apologize. I'm here to talk about parking maximums, and I'm an advocate, obviously, for Cambrian Rise. I live in the New North End on Apple Tree Point Lane, and I apologize for being very late to this game because this conversation has been going on for quite a while. Cambrian Rise is in a multimodal district. I think that that's an incorrect designation for our particular project, given the dynamics out there. It's not the same as downtown, and I do strongly support encouraging people to people to use alternative forms of transportation. We do have car share, and we have a TDM plan, and we invest very heavily in supporting bike and bike path connections. But the reality is people who don't drive their cars still own them, and when they're not driving them, they got to park them somewhere. And so I would like an opportunity to talk about this further, about us maybe being in the shared use district, and why we think that we're ought to be treated differently than in a designated downtown where there's significant amount of public, parking available. We are making an effort. We build like 73% of our parking in structured spaces, so that ultimately, if we can reclaim our surface spaces, not only do we reduce our overall lot coverage, but I think in the long run, this is a generational change, getting people to get out of their cars. It's something totally different to get them to give them up. And we've built a lot of apartments, small units. Now we're moving towards larger units and home ownership, and that's going to put even more pressure on the fact that people are going to own cars and need to park them. Thank you. Right on time.
Thank you, Eric. Our next speaker is Nick Kavanaugh. Good evening.
Hello, good evening. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak. I'm going to speak about the Railyard Enterprise Project. So my name's Nick and I'm a co-owner of Railyard Apothecary. We're a worker-owned co-op. It's located in the part of the building that would be removed for the Railyard Enterprise Project. Our business started in 2016. We have 5 worker owners in addition to 3 part-time staff. We are a hub for our local herbalism community. We sell retail herbs, offer herbal consultations, and teach classes about herbalism. We carry almost 200 medicinal herbs such as chamomile, lavender, and peppermint. We source many of our herbs from Vermont growers, including 2 in Burlington and 8 others. Our 4 clinical office rooms serve as a space for herbal consultations. We also provide space to 5 other practitioners serving our community, including a naturopathic doctor, acupuncturist, nutritionist, and 2 massage therapists. Our 3,600 square feet includes a 750 square foot studio space that we use for herbal education. We also share that space with 3 yoga teachers, including an aerial yoga teacher, who utilizes our unusual extra tall ceilings. Our business is multifaceted, and it would be very difficult to relocate. For at least a couple of years, we've heard about the Railyard Enterprise Project and have seen images of plans showing the new road going directly in front of the building. I was interviewed on the local news, saying I supported the project because it would bring visibility to our out-of-the-way location. In early September, public plans were presented showing a brand new set of options, all of which involve removing our part of the building, along with Cricket Radio next door. No one from the city reached out to us about this. I happened to talk to someone passing by doing a walking tour of the project. My strong preference would be to keep the original plan, the building is spared, and we get a road passing by. I also strongly feel that a road should be built to divert traffic from the King Street neighborhood, so if it's not possible for a building to be spared, our business needs compensation. It's unlikely for us to find another location as unique as ours where we can continue doing everything we do. So please consider our needs in your decisions on this issue.
Great. Thank you very much. We have no one else who has signed up to speak in Conchoice. However, we do have 3 people that are online. I'm just waiting for hosting responsibility so that I can enable microphones. Just hold on for just a moment. While that's going on, the 3 people that are in the queue to speak online are first Barbara Hedrick, to be followed by Sharon Busher. It looks like now I can do that. So with that, call on Barbara Hedrick. I've enabled your microphone, Barbara, so you should be able to speak.
Good evening, councilors. Prior to 2013, the athletic campus census block was part of Ward 1 for more than 50 years. Only beginning in 2013, with the creation of the Salamander Ward, did Ward 1 not include the athletic campus dorms. Reverting to maps that includes some of the athletic campus in Ward 8 is very problematic because the Main Street and Maple Street corridor is extremely dense with off-campus students. So when you combine the on-campus students from some of the dorms on the athletic campus, plus those who live off-campus along Main and Maple, it ends up creating a ward where the long-term residents are the minority. Instead, I'd like to suggest, please, that Nancy and the other people in the working group suggest having a cohesive new ward of the North Hill section neighborhood bounded by Mansfield, Union, Main, and Archibald. The independent mapping group's 8-ward option F2 map does this and accomplishes most of your listed goals. It also allows there to be a downtown ward that doesn't reach too far into the old North End or too far up the hill. And it keeps Edmonds in Ward 6. It balances the on-campus students. It preserves neighborhoods. Thank you for, again, take a look at the independent mapping group's 8-ward option F2 map and see if that meets what you want to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker that is online is Sharon Busher. Sharon, I've enabled your microphone, so you should be able to speak now.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I wanted to thank Councilor Hightower for voicing the concerns that were raised during the Neighborhood Planning Assembly. I think that what got lost in the discussion when the council started talking about what she said was that yes, it's a change in boundary, but that is the core part of Ward 1 that has single-family homes, that has stability, that has voter engagement. And that's a huge loss to Ward 1, if indeed, to our section of the city, if that group goes someplace else. I appreciate the fact that they would move as a block. I get that, and I can't speak for them, but I think that matters. But the other factor that keeps getting circumvented is that in the only report that I ever received when I was on the city council, and it was right before I left the city council, it stated that most off-campus students live in Ward 1. There had been a big shift, and that is where most live. And I can attest, that when I campaigned in 2020, there was a revolving door, and the renters were no longer long-term renters. They were predominantly people affiliated with the university, and they stayed for a very short time. So if you take the dorms and the off-campus students, I think what you've done is switch the impact from Ward 8 to Ward 1. And I don't think that was the intent. I think to ignore the fact that you have to address how many people live off campus to the best of your ability. And there was a report that was generated, and at least refer to that as you move forward. I very much appreciate your time. This is tough stuff. And thanks for listening.
Thank you. Our last speaker is, who's online, is Dan Castrojano. Dan, I'm not sure from the way that you filled out the form if you wanted to speak during public forum. I know that you're an applicant for a commission appointment. If you wanted to speak at that time, or if you would like to speak now.
Hi, Councilor Paul. Thank you.
Hi.
Castrogano is how you pronounce my last name. Thanks. I just wanted to confirm that I would have a chance to speak later on. I couldn't get out of the house because of some family stuff, and would appreciate some time later on.
Of course, you'll have that time. The position that you've applied for is under the City Council with Mayor presiding. That won't happen for some time, but you will certainly have an opportunity then to speak to the council.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Sure. With that, and with no other speakers in Conchoice or online, we will close the public forum, and move on to item 4, which is a communication regarding CityPlace. There are 2 items as part of this agenda item. The first is a public presentation from CityPlace partners on this long-awaited project. And I understand we have, and I can see that we have CETO Director Brian Pine with us. Would look to you, Brian, if you'd like to tee this off, or if you want to hand the floor to the CityPlace partners.
Actually, I'd like to hand it off to the mayor to get us started. That's okay.
Okay, thank you. Mayor Weinberger.
Thank you, President Paul. Good evening, everyone. I'd like to start by kind of framing up for the council and the public the discussions that are going to take place regarding CityPlace tonight. First, we are going to give our first update to the City Council and the public about CityPlace since May, which was just prior to when the local partners, headed by Scott Ireland, Dave Farrington, and Al Senecal, all of whom are here tonight, secured control of the site. This update is going to start with a quick overview from me about where the project stands, and then I will turn over the presentation to, I believe, Dave Farrington of CityPlace Partners, and we are also going to hear from Champlain Housing Trust, the Executive Director, Michael Monti, for them to update them on their efforts. I want to note that the city team working on this project, which is a sizable team, we have members of it here, David White, Brian Pine, our CETO director, and Tim Sampson, who is our lawyer working on this, alongside acting city attorney Kim Sturdivant, and Laura Wheelock from DPW is playing a very large role right now as well. The team is also here and will participate in the expected executive session that is planned to follow the public update. We are not expecting any council action tonight after the executive session. We do, however, expect to seek further council action on this project soon, possibly as soon as next Monday. And here's why. Since taking over the project in May, the local partners have made extensive progress and are on the verge of moving from a project that has been stalled since 2018 to one that is under full construction. As a sign of that, I am happy to share that the city received a building permit application for the project's foundation earlier today. CPP, CityPlace Partners, will share more about what this significant milestone means and other details regarding their progress in a moment. For the project to take this step, however, and start construction of the foundation, further action from the City Council will be needed. And the details of that action is what we're going to be reviewing with the Council in executive session tonight. Since it's been some time since we've discussed CityPlace, I'd like to just take a moment before going further to review the public interests that are at stake in this project and why, as a result of those interests, we have an agreement in place known as the Amended and Restated Development Agreement between the city and CityPlace Partners to support what is largely a private development project. The central reason for this agreement, the reason why we need a public-private partnership, whereas that, generally when we see private developments move forward, that's not needed, is that this project involves substantial new public infrastructure being built that will result in the realization of a goal that has been part of official city policy since the adoption of Plan BTV downtown in 2012. And that goal is the reconnection of St. Paul Street and Pine Streets for the first time since they were severed in the 1960s during what's known as the urban renewal period. This public infrastructure will be built with future tax dollars that will be generated by the project through an instrument known as tax increment financing. And there's also a possibility that some federal infrastructure funds could be used to expand the amount of new downtown infrastructure that is built in the next few years. From the beginning of this project, all public funds have been carefully protected from development and construction risk. And as a result of those protections, the very substantial costs of delays since 2018 have all been borne by the developer, not by the city. Some of the updates to the agreement that we're going to need to talk about are intended to ensure that this protection of public dollars continues. The City of Burlington has numerous other important interests in this project moving forward to successful completion, including the creation of more than 400 much-needed homes to address our acute and long-standing housing supply shortage. Within that 400, this project will create 85 permanently affordable rentals, which means that this project will be the largest affordable family housing development in Burlington in decades. And we'll hear more about that from Michael Monti and CHT in a moment. In addition, this project will create tens of thousands of square feet of new job-creating retail space and the creation of vast new property tax revenues for the city and the education fund, as well as the creation of other important new public revenues. The current agreement between the city and CityPlace partners was written and approved in early 2021. In the roughly 18 months since then, much has happened. The ownership of the project has changed, and as we'll hear in a moment, the developers now plan to join forces with a new affordable housing partner. The legislature has granted a general extension for all TIF projects in recognition of the extremely challenging economic circumstances created by the pandemic, and that creates the opportunity to change some of the TIF deadlines that were in the last version of this agreement driven by the statutes that were in place at that time. Further, all litigation regarding the project has now been resolved. All of these changes, as well as other details that have evolved over the last 18 months, require updates to the current development agreement. The city team has been working on these changes really since the beginning of the year. We and CityPlace partners knew that changes would be needed to the development agreement when they took over ownership from Don Sinex in May, and we discussed that need publicly at the time, and we briefed the council in executive session in May that changes would be needed. The fact that we are now ready to discuss these changes in detail in executive session in anticipation of bringing forward an updated agreement for approval soon should be seen as a further sign of the progress of this project. And with that, I would like to invite CPP and CHC to come up and share further details about their progress.
Do you have hosting? Were you able to share your screen? You should be able to. There you go. There you go.
So first, I want to thank City Council and the Mayor's office.
If you could just speak into the microphone just so that we all can hear you.
So I want to thank City Council and the Mayor's office for inviting us for this update. And I'm Dave Farrington, one of the partners of CityPlace partners, along with Al Senecal in Scott, Ireland. This is Patrick O'Brien. He's one of our project managers who's been super instrumental in forging this thing ahead. We've been double teaming with the city and the Department of Public Works, working with the CEDO office, working with all the departments on every detail of this. And So we made a lot of progress, and that's what we're here tonight to talk about. So the mayor mentioned back in the spring, it was actually the last day or two of May, we came to terms with Don Sinex to have him step aside from the project, and we took over his ownership. And immediately we re-engaged with the design team, the architects, French Freeman, and all the subcontracting engineers, got the plans back on schedule, started working on the miscellaneous permits we needed from the state, working out the last details with DPW on some of the road issues and infrastructure utilities, working with Burlington Water and the sewer and electric. And we've gotten to the point where we are now, we just applied today for our foundation permit, submitted those plans this afternoon, and we will be starting on the south building. It's a foundation permit for the entire site, but we're going to be concentrating on the south building, which is shown down in the southeast corner, which is on Bank Street. 100 Bank is our neighbor to the west, and the MBT building is the neighbor to the east. And that's the kind of standalone building. I can show a picture of that here. It's the limestone building on the corner. So we're going to be focusing on that and working around clockwise on the block in order to get ready and prepare the foundation and the podium on the north building, which is the wing that runs down the new Pine Street. And we have partnered with Champlain Housing Trust to be the developer, co-developer and partner on that piece of the project, which will provide the inclusionary zoning units that are required, 85 or 86 units. And the concept is that we're going to build the ground floor retail all around the block, and then above that is where the residential takes place, and those are called the podiums. And CHT will be buying their podium on that Pine Street side and then constructing their project on top of that. And I can let Mike explain a little bit about where they're at and how they go about that.
Excuse me, good evening. I'm Michael Monti. I'm the CEO of Champlain Housing Trust, and let me just say I'm operating on London time right now. And so it's 3 in the morning, and I'm past due for a pint, as they would say. But thank you, councilors, for the opportunity to speak to you this evening. CHC is pleased to be in partnership with CityPlace partners and feel strongly that this is a unique and great opportunity to build affordable housing in downtown Burlington. As the mayor says, one of the largest affordable housing developments in certainly in decades. As you know, CHD and its partner Evernorth, which is formerly Housing Vermont, has a strong track record of building and developing affordable housing in Burlington and throughout northwest Vermont. And though not exclusively, we have often partnered with private developers to achieve that goal, having done that in Shelburne, South Burlington, St. Albans, here in Burlington, and actually currently with SD Ireland and Colchester. Our portion of the project we're calling CityPlace West will provide permanently affordable rental homes. Our rents will be deeply affordable and will go way beyond the scope of the current IZ ordinance, bringing a quality home to not only what the ordinance requires, but much deeper than that, with 68 of the 85 apartments occupied by residents earning less than 60% of the median income, and a third of that earning less than 50% of the median income. And at least 20% of the people who are residing will be formerly houseless and will have a home once they come into our development. As a result, our proposed apartment size and bedroom mix will respond to the need and demand guided by the hundreds of applications, and I mean hundreds of applications we receive each month, and regulated by state and federal funding requirements to create well-sized, high-quality apartments. As with all projects We cannot be certain when the entire financing package will be assembled, but we feel confident that it can be done given the resources that are currently available at the local and state level, and given the need and support that this development has not only in Burlington but throughout the state of Vermont. We are aggressively pursuing financing, have been having discussions with state and federal leaders, and certainly the local leadership about this, and have a clear and strong framework and path to be successful in our goal. We have not initiated a project like this without finishing it. And so that's our intent here. Again, what I want to say is that what we will do will go deeper and differently than the IZ ordinance, will achieve a level of affordability that is stronger than is required by the ordinance or even the development agreement. And as such, the sizing of our apartments and how we approach it may be different than typical that you might have in the IZ ordinance. But I'll stop there and be available to answer any questions as we move along.
Yeah, I'm having technical difficulties getting this up here again. But
You want me to sing?
Yeah.
Because I can't.
You can or can't?
I can't.
It's always harder when you're trying to do it under pressure.
Yeah. I had it once. Well, anyway, so we're going to, starting in early November, we'll begin construction on that southeast corner. Again, like I said, working around the, clockwise around the block in order to prep for the CHT podium. And then we'll continue along the north building, which is all along Cherry Street, and then turning down the new St. Paul Street, again, creating the lower retail space and then the second floor podium there. Right now, we're evaluating 3 potential partnerships very similar to what the one that we're hammering out with CHT, and that'll allow us to have a joint venture partner on the balance of the north building. So the south building will be under construction, probably going vertical by about June or July of 2023. Again, some scheduling opportunities with CHT, figuring out when the best time is to start that. But the podium will be prepped and continuing on to the rest of the north building. Finishing off the entire project with completing the 2 levels of structured parking above grade. And as part of this amendment to the development agreement, we've worked on some agreed to schedules with the city on, so starting this fall, being completed by the same time, November of 2025, with the roads complete and the rest of the public improvements, the sidewalks, the landscaping. So we're looking at about a 3-year schedule, and we're real confident about moving ahead at this point, and all I can say is it's about time.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Are there others that are either with you or on the city side who wanted to add anything?
Not around?
We'll just answer questions if you guys have any questions. We're looking forward to getting started. We'll get this project started. We're pretty excited about it. Hope you guys are as well.
Thank you. We do have an expected executive session, but before we go into executive session, if there are counselors who have any questions or comments, now would be that time. Please don't let the lack of questions deter our, or send a message of our lack of enthusiasm. We just have we try to give people the opportunity to speak, but we also know that we're going to be having an expected executive session, and we'll probably be in a better position to answer questions as the project moves forward.
Councilor Paul?
Yes, Councilor Bergman.
I actually don't need or even want you to give me an answer tonight, but just like CHT has given us an indication of what they're going to be renting for, and I want to say publicly how much I appreciate that. I look at the rents that we just got from VHFA and understand that. I think putting that in dollars and cents so people know it would be better. But for the market rate, remainder, it would be helpful to understand what those rents are so we can understand what this development is going to be doing to the socioeconomic mix of the downtown and the areas around it. So you don't have to give me anything tonight. It's probably still developing, but I just think that that will be important so that people can really understand what it is that we're getting. I mean, yeah, I'll leave it at that.
Well, there's going to be a wide range because we're going from small efficiency units to studios, 1 bedroom, 2 bedroom. I think we have some 3 bedrooms in this south building. So the mix is going to be there, and it's, you know, we do have a commitment. I think it's actually written up in the agreement to try to strive to provide and market to the worker housing segment, as well as, you know, the range of the market rate stuff that will be out there. And again, market kind of sets rates. So it's going to be, there's a lot of units, and there's going to be a lot of opportunity to see where it lands. But yeah, we'll probably come up with something to share with you.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I think the public will definitely do, and as somebody who represents a working class ward, one of the poorer wards, people are really stretched for housing, even those who are making, you know, 100% of the adjusted gross or median income in the area. So them understanding what this will do for the availability of housing to them will be really appreciated. Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Bergman. We'll go to Councilor Barlow.
Thank you, President Paul. I just want to, I don't have any questions right now, and I'm looking forward to the executive session, but I just want to express my enthusiasm for this project, and I concur with the sentiment that was expressed earlier. It's about time, and I'm excited to get going on this. So thank you for that update tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councilor Barlow. I'll certainly second that. This has been a long time in coming, and we certainly are happy to have you here, and also very happy that there are local faces at the table. Yes. If you could just come to the microphone so that we can hear.
Yeah, Al's referring to, you know, we'll be blunt. We were handed a mess when we bought this thing. It was kind of embarrassing, actually, to be associated through all these stumbles that were in place. And one of the first things we had to do was clean up 3 or 4 lawsuits. Some of them were a big deal, really impeding, you know, progress on the project, the availability of financing, having anybody even talk to us as partners. So we settled with Mr. Franco and Company, which was very important because, you know, they were really holding things up. We, with the help of the mayor and mediation in the spring, got through some difficult moments with our neighbor at 100 Bank Street. We got that all settled out. We're on great terms with them now. We're actually going to be getting our temporary power out of his building. We're going to be building right up to him on 2 sides. So we realized that had to be, we had to mend those fences right away. And then there was some other longer conflicts that had been derived between our former partner and the previous general contractor that he had brought in. We got stuck settling that up and a couple other little miscellaneous disputes, but as of last Friday, filed with the court was the last Franco dismissal, and so we're free and clear of any opposition. And I guess we should say also, we're planning on building this exactly as it was permitted originally. So the same number of units, the same, there's no changes. We're not like trying to make any changes to what got permitted. We thought that was the cleanest. There's no like bait and switch appearance. It's just like, let's build what, and that's what we'd always been pushing for. Let's just build what we get permits for. So that's our plan, and no structural changes. You know, the floor plans on the retail may change a little bit depending on the tenants we talk to and the sizes that they're looking for. But that's about the only flexibility in the building. It's the 427 units, including the CHT units, 420 120 or so parking spaces and about 45,000 feet of street side retail all the way around. And there is a restaurant and public observatory space on the roof of the south building.
Great, thank you. Thanks so much. And again, thanks so much for being here. We'll go to Mayor Weinberger, and then we will go to motions to move into executive session.
Thank you, President Paul, and thank you all for being here tonight. Just want to share my sense that since May, I think this new team has really made more progress in the maybe 5 months since taking over than had happened in all the time since 2018. A lot of what you just heard about, the change, the fact that there has been an ownership change, that CHT is now expected to build the affordable development as opposed to in the prior plan. Don Sinix was expecting to build all the affordable housing himself. The fact that the litigation is gone, all these are important changes that have taken place since the current agreement was created and approved by this body back in the beginning of 21. And so the process that we're about to talk to you in executive session is the process of updating the document to reflect those changes, to make it work with the deal that is now, the agreement that is now, the plan that is now in place. And I'm very optimistic, hopeful that we will all be able to come to a meeting of minds so that this team can move forward in the weeks ahead.
Thank you very much, Mayor Weinberger. Well, in that spirit, we'll move to the next item on our agenda, which is part of the CityPlace item 2.02, which is a communication with which is an expected executive session regarding the CityPlace development. In order to go into executive session, we have two motions, and for the first motion, I'll go to Councilor Carpenter. If you could read off the first motion, please.
Thank you. I would move that the council find that premature general public knowledge of information concerning contract negotiations and attorney-client communications regarding CityPlace would clearly place the city at a substantial disadvantage with such negotiations.
Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. So we need a second to that motion, seconded by Councilor McGee. Is there any discussion on that motion? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion as made by Councilor Carpenter, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. That motion passes, and with that, we would go on to the second motion. Councilor Carpenter.
Thank you. Based on upon that finding, I would move that the council go into executive session to receive confidential attorney-client communications and updates on contract negotiations regarding CityPlace under 1 VSA 313A, 1A, and F.
Thank you. And the second to that motion would be made by Councilor McGee. And as part of that motion, the executive session will include members of the mayor's staff, CEDO Director Brian Pine, David G. White, and Attorney Tim Sampson. I believe that I'm covered everyone. Is that correct, Mayor Weinberger?
If we could add Laura Wheelock from DPW, that would be great.
Okay, and Laura Wheelock and DPW Director Chapin Spencer as well? Yes?
Great.
Okay, thank you. So there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion on the motion? Councilor Shannon.
Just a quick question. I didn't know if there was an estimate on the time for the executive session.
We will get to that. Seeing no other questions, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say no. That motion passes, and we're expecting that the executive session will last no more than 45 minutes. which will put us to approximately 9 p.m. We are going to be going downstairs into the Busher Conference Room. So for those of you who are here in person in Contois, you can make yourselves comfortable if you want to stay with us for the 45 minutes, or certainly can come back. We hope to return again by 9 p.m. Thank you. Open session. The next item on our agenda is item number 5, and that's climate emergency reports. Is there any counselor or the administration who wishes to offer a climate emergency report? Seeing none, we will continue with item number 6, which is our consent agenda. Is there a motion to move our consent agenda and take the actions as indicated?
Point of information about
Yes.
climate emergency. Could you share what happened at Champlain Elementary School today?
I could. We did talk about that at the outset of our meeting, but fortunately, we were lucky that a number of other counselors were at the event. I'm happy to do it, but are there other counselors who might want to talk about what their impressions were of the nature-based climate solutions? We did see, I'm sorry, go ahead, Councilor Travers.
If you're inviting folks to,
yes,
to
I'll
chime
give you
in,
a chance.
sure.
Yes.
So there were a number of us who were able to join, Zoe Richards, among other folks who invited us to Champlain Elementary School to see some nature-based climate solutions at play. Before I joined the council, this council did act on formally adopting a plan regarding nature-based climate solutions. We are a city, like many urban environments, as compared to other parts of the state, that is warmer because of the footprint of an urban environment. And nature-based climate solutions are building us towards maintaining a cooler, more sustainable, more climate-resilient city. We saw a number of different things they're doing there, including a wildlife corridor that they've built up on the hill behind Champlain Elementary, a garden that the Champlain Elementary students have referred to as a stick garden, that is cuttings of different trees that I think within a relatively small footprint, they said something like more than 80 trees it will turn into for replanting. I didn't realize this, but as compared to any place in Vermont, Burlington is growing more new trees than any other location in the state. At the Intervale, I believe, we're growing something like 30,000 new trees to be planted elsewhere, with a goal towards relatively soon in the future getting to growing 70,000 new trees to be put elsewhere. But I think really the highlight of the visit was a group of, as President Paul was mentioning earlier, 5th graders who started in on this project, some in 3rd grade, some in 4th grade at Champlain Elementary, working on these different aspects, including the wildlife corridor, the stick garden. They've collected a number of acorns that they're planning on germinating and planting elsewhere. They provided, like President Paul mentioned, some homemade apple crisps from apples at Champlain Elementary. They showed us a number of signs that they made about their favorite thing about wild spaces, and it was really nice to hear from the kids, hopefully a mission that they carry on through their grade school career. And Zoe Richards, who's really just a champion of this, and we're so lucky to have her here in Burlington, spoke to sort of how emotional it is to see young kids in elementary school speaking to this issue sort of almost to the same level that she can now, having operated in it for decades. So it was a nice visit and nice demonstration of what we're doing really citywide for nature-based climate solutions, and I really appreciate their inviting us.
Thank you.
That was an excellent summary. Was there anyone else who wanted to offer their impressions of the field trip? Seems like Councilor Travers did a wonderful job. It was a great experience. I think we were all felt really good about having been there, and it was a pleasure to see the young people, the fifth graders that were there. They were really excited and really proud to show us what they had done. We'll go on to item number 6, which is our consent agenda. Is there a motion to move our consent agenda and take the actions indicated?
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor McGee. Is there a second to that motion? Thank you, Councilor Hightower. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. We've approved our consent agenda. Before we get to the deliberative agenda, we have 2 other meetings that we need to attend to, the Local Control Commission and the City Council with Mayor presiding. So we'll recess the City Council meeting at 9:35 and call to order the Local Control Commission. The first item I'm just going to go to that meeting. The first item on that agenda is item 1.01. Is there a motion to adopt the agenda?
So moved.
So moved. Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner Travers, seconded by Commissioner Carpenter. Is there any discussion on the motion to adopt the agenda? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say no, please. We have our agenda. There's no consent agenda, so we have 1 item on our deliberative agenda. That is item 2.01, which is a first-class restaurant liquor license application 2022-2023 for Dim Sum, Cafe Dim Sum. And Commissioner Travers, I'll go to you.
Yeah, I'll move to approve the 2022-23 first-class restaurant liquor license application for Cafe Dim Sum, 95 St. Paul Street, Suite 120, with the following conditions. All city permits need to be closed out, contingent upon fire marshal approval, and with all standard conditions.
Motion made by Councilor Travers, thank you. Seconded by Commissioner Shannon. Is there any discussion on the motion? And I do see that Will Clavel is on Zoom. He was with the applicant at the License Commission, or at the License Committee meeting. I don't know, Will, if there was anything that you wanted to add on behalf of the applicant?
Good evening, councilors. Sorry we're not there in person. We were there earlier and saw that you're going into executive session. Sam and Lee are here on Zoom. They are the owners of Cafe Dim Sum, and I would just say that there's a lot of excitement. They opened about a year ago, the first dim sum restaurant in Burlington, quickly outgrew their space, so they've expanded and tripled their space, and they're going to be adding hot pot. And I think bringing dim sum and hot pot to Burlington are 2 things that we haven't had, and I know the community is very excited about it, so just want to support them. They're very, very hard workers. They've owned restaurants in Burlington for over 15 years, and I'm excited as a foodie to see them opening up this new venture in Burlington.
Great, thank you. Thanks, Will. If there's anything that the applicants would like to add, now would be the time, or we can go to any counselor questions. I guess we'll go to, if there's any discussion on the motion made by Councilor Travers. Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. And that motion passes unanimously. Thanks, Will. Thanks for being here. And to the applicants, we wish you the best. With no other business on this agenda and seeing no objection, we'll adjourn the Local Control Commission meeting at 9:37, and we will I'll turn this over to the mayor to preside over the City Council with Mayor presiding.
Thank you, President Paul. I call to order the meeting of the City Council with Mayor presiding at 9:36 p.m. and would welcome a motion to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by President Paul. Discussion. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? We have an agenda. Next item is the consent agenda. And President Paul.
I'll make a motion to adopt the consent agenda and take the actions as indicated.
Thank you. Is there a second for that motion? Seconded by Councilor McGee. Discussion. Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. I just can't see, do we have Councilor Freeman on the line?
No, we do not.
Okay. So it's just the members that are present.
Yes.
We will now go to item 3.01, which is an appointment for an airport commission for a term expiring on June 30th, 2023. So to fill out the rest of this term through next year. And the floor is open for nominations. Councilor Bergman.
I'd nominate Dan Castigrano, who I believe is the only applicant. Dan was present before, but we had led him to believe that the executive session was going to be much shorter, and he had a child that I know had some difficulties tonight, and and he wanted, if he's here, then that would be great. If he's not, then people are pointing up there. But
I see some note at the bottom of the screen about him, so maybe, I'm not sure who's, are you able to, I don't know who the host is.
I got off when we went into executive session, but I can get back on.
Okay.
I can help.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
Okay, great. And before we go, so good. I see Dan is available, and we will, as we do typically, allow the applicant to speak to the full body in a moment. First of all, but first, are there any other nominations? If there are no other nominations, we will close the floor for nominations. And now, Dan, go ahead. Hopefully, you can address, if you could make a short statement to the City Council with Mayor presiding.
Sure, thank you, Mayor Weinberger and City Council. Councilors Travers and Paul, thank you for speaking about going to talk to fifth graders about climate change. I've taught a lot of students about climate change, and one of the hardest things to do is to talk about it, and then the emotional part at the end when you are telling them, what we're doing about it. So I prepared a short little statement here. The city of Burlington declared climate emergency on September 23rd, 2019. That was 1,120 days ago. And in the interim, the climate emergency has only worsened. Flooding in Pakistan, hurricanes in the Gulf South, collapse of wildlife populations. And Vermont is not immune to the effects of the climate emergency. It is impacting what makes Vermont so special. Shorter and warmer winters for winter sports, a shorter and more unpredictable sugaring season for maple syrup, fewer opportunities to swim in Lake Champlain due to cyanobacteria, and all of this is impacting our economy. It's the truth. It's important to speak the truth. It's not fun to hear, but that's the truth. And the burning of fossil fuels is the main cause of the climate emergency. And that includes in all sectors: electricity, buildings, aviation. And the South Burlington City Council recently failed to include aviation emissions from the airport in their climate action plan. And they're also not accounted for in the Burlington Net Zero Energy Roadmap or in the 2021 Vermont Climate Assessment. They exist in this murky in-between where municipalities and states all look the other way, but if everybody looks the other way, they're still in the atmosphere. So what should we do? We have to both measure and manage aviation emissions from the airport. So I'm applying to the Airport Commission to help the city of Burlington measure emissions from the airport and include them in Burlington's Net Zero Energy Roadmap, and to cap and reduce the amount of flights at the airport. Luckily for us, we have an example from across the pond. In June, the Dutch government decided to cap flights at Amsterdam's Schiphol Airport in 2024. This represents a 12% cut from pre-pandemic levels. The Dutch have shown great courage, and we have a unique opportunity in Burlington to do the same. We can be leaders on the national and international stage. I included all of this on my application for the Airport Commission and in my messages to all of you today. Climate change and climate justice is what I care about the most. And so I'm not trying to hide anything. This is why I'm applying to the Airport Commission. And I know many of you here and at home are worried about economic prosperity and that this can be harmful to our community. But the simple truth is that we can't have infinite growth on our finite planet. It is not sustainable. We don't have infinite steel and plastic and glass and rubber and everything else. There's only so much on this planet. And we can create a prosperous, thriving Vermont while reducing emissions from the airport. We can have housing, jobs, businesses that thrive within our planetary limits. We can build upon the opening of the Ethan Allen Express and work to expand rail service and frequency. We can protect our $1.6 billion ski industry that, under high emission scenarios, is no longer viable in 2080. So I've looked at the minutes of recent Airport Commission meetings. I know it's not about climate, it's about grants and de-icing materials and noise impacts and lots of other things. I will contribute to that work and help steward the airport to the best of my ability. And I can help calculate the emissions from aviation. I can run the numbers, I can create the spreadsheets, I can do the stuff that a lot of other people don't want to do so that we can take bold and courageous and necessary action. And finally, this appointment, as you said, ends on June 30th, 2023. So if you don't like my being on the commission and I choose to reapply, you can vote me down in 8 months. But tonight I ask for your vote so that I can contribute to the Airport Commission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dan. Is there any, so we have the one nomination. Is there any further discussion before we go to a vote? Councilor Bergman.
So I just want to ask you to support Dan's appointment. He has laid out the question of climate, and if that emergency resolution that we adopted means anything, it means us taking what the airport does into consideration. And we're doing it partially through the ground operations and other work. Dan has the expertise to assist in all of that work. But it also means taking all the other things that are involved, including airport emissions or aviation emissions, into account. We got a burning planet, and those kids that I saw today deserve to have something that is going to be habitable and livable for them. So we actually really need a climate expert, somebody who's an educator as well, to be on that commission, like we need in all of the commissions that we have. Now, when I supported Nick Longo to be the permanent director, I had a long conversation with Nick, and he expressed willingness to measure all of the emissions that are coming out of the airport, not just the ground emissions. That's something that that Dan can assist on greatly. But you heard Dan talk about his desire to make sure that all the things, the de-icing, et cetera, will be taken into account. But we really do need to keep in mind the climate emergency when we're dealing with all of that work, and that includes having somebody with Dan's expertise on the commission. So that's the sweetest way that I can express a real strong sense that we need to have somebody like Dan, and that we fiddle while our planet burns when we fail to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Councilor Hightower.
Just a quick comment that I am supportive of this appointment. I do encourage the applicant, as I did over email, to think about emissions and after that, total energy use, regardless of the associated emissions, rather than flights, because I think it's good to measure what we actually want to reduce.
Thank you, Councilor Hightower. Are there any further comments before we go to a vote? Councilor Carpenter.
Thanks. I appreciate the passion that Dan has for climate change. I need to say, to leap right into a commission appointment where there's a presumption that we need to reduce flights, and that's the only way we're going to get there, is troublesome to me, and I'm just not ready to support that as a position coming out of the gate. I agree with Councilor Bergman's points of view. I think we should push the airport to measure emissions, and that's an administrative function they should do without a commissioner. We should ask them to do that, but I'm not ready to leap to a position that will require people to drive to other airports, or whether that's good for our region or not good for our region. So I just want to express that.
Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. Any further discussion? Councilor Jang.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I completely agree with your statement about, about the application that we read, and I'm a little bit concerned as well. But to tell you the truth, it is also inspiring to see a young man in front of us speaking with passion about climate change and also want to serve the city in this capacity, especially when he is the only person applying for this job. And I hope that Dan will learn at the commission that things don't work sometimes the way you want to. But we invite you to collaborate with people who are there and to try to move the needle to the right direction with what is possible for the city of Burlington to do. Because there is a sense of urgency, but also there is a way that we work together, that we inspire. So you have my vote. Congratulations. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion? Okay. We will go to a vote. I believe, I'm not certain about this because I know department head appointments are different, but I think that the requirement is for a majority of the members present. We will have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10 members voting. So we need 6 votes for Mr. Castor. You still have 10, do you? I vote on this, so I believe we have 10. So we will go with the show of hands. All those in favor of appointing Dan Castigliano, sorry if I don't have that pronunciation quite right, to the Airport Commission, please raise your hand. I see 1, 2, 3, 4 votes, and so there's not sufficient votes for the appointment to carry. I would welcome a motion to re-advertise the position. Councilor Shannon. Thank you, Councilor Shannon. Is there any discussion of the motion? President Paul? No, sorry.
I think we have to have a second.
Sorry, second.
I'll second.
Seconded by President Paul. Discussion?
Just want to note that this is, I think, the second time that we've reposted the position. And I do think, to Dan's point, it is a shame that we didn't move forward with this applicant for the next 8 months, even with some of the issues that some of us felt with it, given that we've reposted this and had a few applicants. Thank you.
Any further discussion on the motion to repost the position? Seeing none, we'll go through the vote. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Is that an opposition as well? Why don't we do, we can, I believe it carries by a vote of, let's do a show of hands. All those in favor of the motion, please raise your hand. Are there any opposed? The motion carries 6-4, and the position will be reposted. Thank you, Dan. for your passion and for your application. And there may, since the airport is engaged in substantial planning for how it becomes an even more, it's already one of the greener airports in the country, but it is engaged in planning to make it even more so. There may be other opportunities for you to engage in that work, given your passion in this area. With that, seeing no further business and no objection, sorry, I apologize. We also have the Board of Registration of Voters for a term expiring June 30th, 2024. The floor is open for nominations for this position. President Paul.
Thank you. I would nominate Allison Hart.
Thank you. Are there any additional nominations? Councilor Carpenter.
I would nominate Warren Baker.
Great. Are there any additional nominations? Ask again, are there any additional nominations? Final chance. Okay, the floor is closed for nominations. Are either the applicants available here in Contoys, or President Paul, if you're able to look and see if they're online?
I do know that at one point Allison Hart was actually in Contoys and then left when we went into executive session. I believe may be on Zoom, but I'm not sure. I was going to sign on, but I believe Jordan or perhaps Councilor is on.
I don't see Allison Hart. If maybe they're under a different name and want to raise their hand, I'm happy to recognize them, but I don't see them in the attendees.
She may have left.
Okay.
Okay. If we don't have either of the applicants, would the nominators, anyone else like to say anything further about the nominees before we go to a vote? Councilor Carpenter.
I just want to say that Mr. Baker reached out to me when he found out there was an opening and was really very enthusiastic. He's been a poll worker in Ward 4 and has become very engaged and was just really interested in, we don't always have people leaping for the Board of Voter Registration, and he has a genuine interest in making sure that our voting is very inclusive and includes all of our neighbors, so I would heartily nominate him.
Thank you, Councilor Carpenter. President Paul.
Thank you. So Allison had reached out to me, and I was happy to see someone who had not served in a role in city government, who had an interest in this important board. She has served on the board, the Vermont Housing and Conservation Board, and on the Board of Pathways Vermont. And her occupation is a affordable housing and support services consultant. As I say, I'm always happy when people step forward, and I think her hope to accomplish as a board member says a lot, that she would just simply like to ensure that Vermont stays as one of the most accessible places to vote in our country, and has spoken with other either current or past board members, which is why she was encouraged to run for this. Thank you.
Thank you, President Paul. Any further discussion before we go to a vote? Any further discussion? Okay. So we will, again, we'll take 6 votes for either nominee to be appointed. We will start with a show of hands in favor of the first nominee, Allison Hart. Okay, we will make, there are 7 votes for Allison Hart. Congratulations. And thank you for stepping up. It is great to see a competitive race for Board of Registration and Voters at a time when we have, when we see all around us strains on our democratic systems. It's great to see this interest in serving this position, and I want to thank Warren Baker for his application as well, and his commitment to our electoral system. So with that decided, and now I think it's accurate to say there's no more business on this agenda, and I seeing no objection, I will adjourn the City Council with Mayor presiding at 9:56 p.m.
Thank you, Mayor Weinberger. So we will return to our recessed City Council meeting at that same hour. There are 5 items on our deliberative agenda. Give people a chance to move back to that meeting. The first item on our deliberative agenda is item 7.01, which is a tobacco license application 2022-2023 for Vermont Hemp Craft LLC. Councilor Travers, if I could come to you for a motion on this item.
Sure. I'll move to approve the 2022-23 tobacco license application for Vermont Hempcraft LLC, 191 College Street, Suite 100, and would ask for the floor back upon a second.
Motion made by Councilor Travers, thank you, and seconded by Councilor Hightower. Councilor Travers.
Sure. So our license committee reviewed this application. Upon discussing it further with the city attorney's office, I actually don't think the license committee or the council is vested with any authority to take action with respect to tobacco license applications. I think rather the city serves more of an administrative function, that once the application fee is paid, that the application is then forwarded back to the state for consideration. That said, I appreciated the fact that this came before the license committee because it's a part of our getting our heads around locally the retail cannabis industry standing up here in Burlington. I've come to understand that there are certain products that you may come to find in a retail cannabis store that the state requires that you have a tobacco license for, even if, as is the case with this applicant, as was stated before the license committee, you have no intention of selling actual tobacco products, that you need that license for certain paraphernalia and other items that you may find in a retail cannabis store. So again, appreciate this coming before the committee because it gives us really a full scope of the steps that folks are having to take in heading towards a retail cannabis license, as I understand this applicant is doing. We anticipate seeing this applicant again when they come forward for a local cannabis license. So the motion is to approve, but I don't think it makes much of a difference.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilor Travers. Is there any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion as made by Councilor Travers, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say no. That motion passes unanimously, which moves us to item 7.02, which is an appointment to the Winooski Valley Park District with a term expiring June 30, 2024. And with that, the floor is open for nominations for this position. Are there any nominations for this position?
Nominate Andrew Gregg.
Thank you. There's a nomination by Councilor Travers to nominate, to appoint Andrew Craig to this position. Are there any other nominations for this appointment? Are there any other nominations for this appointment? Seeing none, we'll close the floor to nominations. I don't know if the applicant is present. Oh, the applicant is present. Thank you so much for identifying yourself. If you would like to come and introduce yourself, and if you have anything that you'd like to say, we would welcome your comments. Thanks so much for staying so long with us. If you just press the button right in front of you so the green light goes on.
There we go.
Yeah.
I'm a chaplain, and by nature, we don't use microphones very often, so I apologize. In the interest of time, you guys have the application, and what I would like to talk about is how I came to find this, which was as a renter trying to find a way to participate more broadly in the civic process here in Burlington. And renters often have a unique and closer tie to our parks and our public lands because they're often the spaces on the landscape here in the city that we're allowed to have these deep relationships with. And I found this opportunity as a renter and for renters more broadly exciting to have possibly the chance to have a broader stewardship of these parks and these lands that are protected for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks so much for your comments. Are there any councilors who wish to speak to this nomination prior to a vote? Seeing none, then we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the appointment of Andrew Craig to the Winooski Valley Park District, please say aye. Aye. Are there any opposed? Please say no. Congratulations, Andrew. The vote is unanimous. And thank you very much for your willingness to step forward to serve. The next item on our agenda is 7.03, which is a vote on the Railyard Enterprise Project, the preferred alternate selection. We had a work session on this item at our September 19th meeting, and a lot has gone on since that. We had an opportunity for a site visit. We've had lots of questions that have been answered by staff, and the team from DPW is here. Before we go to any comments from you, from the DPW team, we'll go to a motion, and with that, we'll go to Councilor Barlow, who's the chair of the TOOC committee.
Thank you, President Paul. I move to approve the selection of Alternative 1B as the preferred alternative for the Railyard Enterprise Project.
Thank you, Councilor Barlow. A motion is made by Councilor Barlow and seconded by Councilor Bergman. So with that, we'll go to the team from DPW. Any comments that you would like to make before we go to the council and then go to a vote?
Great. Thank you so much, President Paul. I have with me Greg Goyev from Stantec and the DPW project team, Corey Mims, Olivia Duries, and Norm Baldwin. We have a very short presentation just to touch on what additional work we've done since our September meeting and really summarize the Alternative 1B, which we're requesting your support for tonight. With that, I'll turn it over to Corey Mims.
So yes, we're going to keep this short. We had done a bit of outreach, as you're aware, following our last meeting with you all on September 19th. So apologies. Well, I really don't need that. Early October 5th, I went and spoke with Burlington Walk Bike Council and kind of gave them the same presentation in which we presented to you on the 19th of September, further clarifying some of the proposed alignment details as it stands currently, so that to address some of the concerns that they had. I was at the meeting in which they did concur to send to council their memo with their concerns, and I would say that a significant portion of those had been addressed during that meeting with them, but they had that drafted prior to my presentation, and so I feel that we'll continue to take that input and definitely we'll work with them as we progress in this project. So we met with them on October 5th. October 6th, we held the site visit that some of you were able to make it to, and we were able to kind of walk the alignment proposed for the 1B alternative. And I think that we had between councilors, DPW commissioner, as well as some business owners and operators there in the vicinity, as well as some general public who came through. And it was a good event to be able to really see what we were working with in that corridor. On the 11th of October, we met with the Burlington Historic Preservation Review Committee to discuss the impacts that this project would have on some of the historic features in the area. It was a very good conversation in that there was some significant discussion on the project, the alignment, the proposed impacts, planning in the area, and ultimately we came away with a vote in approve, 3-0 vote for approving the 1B alternative as the preferred alternative for this project. And then October 12th, we came through and we tried to attempt to engage the community and the Bob and Mills area through an effort of flyering and sending out translated materials to try to get a little bit more additional feedback from those community members in the immediate vicinity of the project limits. Unfortunately, we did not have a turnout, but we were going to continue to do efforts in the neighborhood to engage the community members on a one-to-one level. So those are some of the outreaches that we had done since the last time we had spoken, and I have the presentation here, but I really just kind of more or less leave it up to councilors. Any other questions?
Thank you. Is there questions from the council? Councilor Jang, and then to be followed by Councilor Bergman.
Thank you, President. I was not here on the 19th. I'm sorry. I missed the presentation and everything. And and also the memo does not really explain the reason as to why this was chosen. I wanted to understand if it's cost-related or environmental issues. What are the issues that led you to choose this B1?
Yeah, there were a number of them. It was both cost and environmental impact. So to go through the three alternatives shown here, really what you're looking at is a similar impact to the area between Battery Street and South Champlain Street, between any of the alignment alternatives. With the 2 alternative and 5B, you're looking at additional connections to the Pine Street corridor. The alternative 2 and 5B both also go down in the area of the Barge Canal, which we know is a Superfund site and a mandated site. So you're talking about additional costs associated with contaminated soils, and a larger footprint of the project incurs additional costs. With that, there's also the impact to what would be the Curtis Lumber Building, or is the Curtis Lumber Building in the alternative 2. And so with the alternative 2 alignment, you would be looking at really the full demolition of the Curtis Lumber Building in order to create the grid street network with Kilburn at that location. And then with those considerations amongst others with traffic analysis, as well as, the cost, environmental impacts, and community engagement, 1B stood out as the preferred alternative of the 3 build options. And this were also compared against the no build option, which would be the 4th project option.
Thank you. Thank you. And I think this is going to be a great addition, especially for those who live in the New North End. This would be good to access 89. During public forum, someone stated that, his business will be impacted, and was wondering if you have alternative of supporting that business.
Yes.
Thanks.
So with the federal process, we have to get a selection of the preferred alternative first before we can move into the right-of-way acquisition, and those further detailed and financial conversations can be held with any property owner. So, following council's, hopeful approval of the 1B alternative, its selection alternative, we would submit the documentation in November to the Federal Highway. They would take their time to review and ultimately come to their conclusion if they also concur and approve the 1B as the alternative, and then we can move into that next phase of further engagement and discussion with both property owners and tenants in the vicinity of the project.
Yep. And lastly, I hope that you maintain a line of communication with them, as we move forward. And thank you, President. Thank you, guys.
Thank you so much, Councilor Jang. We'll go to Councilor Bergman.
Thank you, Councilor Jang, for teeing that last one up nicely. As you know from the walk around and conversations with Nick, that business is going to be severely impacted. And I just want to say that as a supporter of the railroad enterprise project, that we need to not sacrifice that business and any other business in that building on the altar of the correct road route. So everything that the city, not just the DPW, because this is about business support, I think we're at least a day late and many dollars short in terms of our communications with them. And I really think that we have to intensify our communications with that business. I think we have failed them so far, and I hope that we won't continue to do that. I have a question regarding the local motion. I'm happy to see to hear what you're saying about their memo, and there's a 12-day gap. So I just want to make it clear. They talked about and our conversation previously, indicated that a shared use pass is really necessary. So they have made a recommendation in terms of the minimum width in their memo. Could you clarify exactly what the status of that is?
Yes. At this phase, I mean, these are just preliminary. We have it as a 10-foot minimum shared use path through the whole area, which meets the minimum standard per their memo as well. They are recommending, based upon the amount of traffic they anticipate, that they would prefer a 12-foot minimum, which is something that we would look at once we get to the right-of-way acquisition phase and we're able to actually see what room we are able to work with while working with the property owners there on the northeast side of the roadway alignment. So again, the next phase, we definitely would be looking into all those details, and yes, we would continue to investigate that option.
Okay. I think they're right that the traffic on the road is going to be intense, that it's going to be a problem. And as somebody who runs on a shared use path down Riverside Avenue, having that separation from cars is critically important. And the use of this it's going to be really good for the city when this comes into, and so that means there's going to be a lot more traffic there. So I would really encourage you to do everything you can to expand the size of the width of the road. And I just want to find out more in terms of the roadway width. They have recommended reducing the width to 11 or 12 feet to reduce vehicle speeds. I think they're probably right. That's when people will get off of Battery Street and start thinking about going on to 89 from the new North End or from my neck of the woods. And so the chances of people speeding, as they go is great. So the idea of reducing widths is smart in my mind. So your comments?
Yeah, so we have an updated typical roadway section here. The one that was presented previously did not show the 2-foot shoulder on the roadway edging. What it is that with the amount of large truck that are going to be coming out of the Railyard, we had to design the roadway to accommodate their turn movements. And so with the bends to the roadway alignment as it stands now, the semi-trailers were going to require that 13-foot in order to make those movements without mounting the curb. So at this phase, with the serpentine alignment of the roadway, that total 11-foot shared lane and then a 2-foot shoulder, that 2-foot shoulder would allow for those tractor trailers to make those bends without mounting the curb.
Okay, and so that would mean that they've recommended mountable curbs. That is a way that can be integrated into that, or no? But
no mountable curbs. It's just that the shoulder needs to be there to accommodate the truck traffic from using that full 13-foot width to navigate the serpentine corridor.
So clarify for my simple mind how close to the 11 or 12 feet is this going to be? I'm hearing that it's not going to be reduced, that it's going to be, so.
The lane cross-section you're seeing here has just been demarcated here by clarifying there's a shoulder, but the trucks need all 13 feet to navigate the route.
But the roadway itself would be 11, and then
the travel lane is 11 feet with a 2-foot shoulder.
Okay, thank you. And could you just comment about the green belt that they had mentioned?
Yeah, again, similarly to what we said about the same with the width of the shared use path, is that would be looked at and evaluated based upon how much additional right-of-way we're looking to acquire for the roadway alignment. So with that discussions with the property owners, and once we start getting that level of design of the detailed design of the roadway, we can determine how much buffer or of the green belt is going to be able to be put in along this roadway section. So we agree that we want to see as much as possible, as I feel it makes for a better corridor, you allow for better plantings, so all these things are being looked at, but we just can't make a solid determination at this point.
Okay. Yep. For stormwater as well, and you and I talked about the dip, so to speak, so the ponding effect, so all that we can do to deal with that. But I'm excited about the possibility of doing this, and therefore allowing us to do the Southern Connector and also do this right. So this is so far so good.
Thank you, Councilor Bergman. Councilor Hightower.
Sorry, I have more of a, I didn't do my homework as much as Councilor Bergman did, so I think I have more of a follow-up question specific to what is there a strategy and or rights or ability to work with not just property owners, but also renters in order to compensate them for any loss of building, land, anything along those lines?
Yeah, the federal process has us involved with both communication with the property owners as well as businesses and tenants in the area. So it covers a lot, but again, that I would say is, we would have more outreach and specific, the state would have outreach with these businesses as those processes and discussions are held. So at this phase, we have done a lot of outreach to the community as far as stakeholders and tenants as we did not reach out to all tenants directly, as we reached out to the building owners, and they were the ones in which were managing those conversations unless otherwise directed. So, the next phase, everyone would be getting reached out to who's being impacted as it's part of the evaluation process.
And do we have any ability to do we even have the legal ability to give flows to renter, like cash compensation, or is that only to property owners?
The federal process has different ways in which it can accommodate that, and I would actually let our consultant, Greg Goya, speak to this a little bit more detailed than myself.
Awesome.
Sure, yeah. So, as part of that process, impacts to property owners, including tenants, are evaluated. And there is relocation assistance provided for tenants of buildings. And so there's that whole process that we need to follow, and there is appraisals done on the properties to try to determine the value of that, and then have those discussions with those owners and tenants. So that's all part of the process that'll unfold during the detailed design phase of the project.
Great, thank you.
Great, thank you, Councilor Hightower. I don't see anyone else in the queue. If there are no other councilors that wish to offer any comments or questions, then we will go to a vote on the motion. The motion was to approve the selection of Alternative 1B as the preferred alternative for the Railyard Enterprise Project. All those in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, please say no. The motion passes unanimously. Many thanks to all of you for all your engagement with the council on this very important vote. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for the
it's a good day
partnership.
for all of us.
Yep, bold step tonight, and we look forward to working more with you in the future to get this done. Thank you.
Thank you. We will move on to item 7.04, which is an ordinance, comprehensive development ordinance on parking, minimum and maximum parking requirements, and transportation demand management, ZA 22-07. For a motion on this item, I'll go to Councilor Travers.
I move to postpone this item to our meeting on November 7th, 2022, and would ask for the floor back upon a second.
Great, thank you for the motion, seconded by Councilor Hightower. Councilor Travers.
This is an item that we have postponed previously. I would say as we have sort of reached the finish line of a long process with respect to this matter, a number of folks have continued to come forward with questions and feedback with respect to the matter. I hope I'm at liberty to say that I've been working with Councilor Bergman, among others, to try to address some of these concerns. And with a bit more time, hopefully we can reach a conclusion on it. I suppose a comment just to the public, if folks are still tuned in, is that if there are folks who continue to have concerns or feedback with respect to this matter, to please let us know sooner rather than later. This has been on our public agenda a number of times now, and would appreciate that feedback. Hopefully with a bit more time, we can come to a conclusion here on the matter. And I would say another important part for tonight is that I do think that this is a matter that will require some further feedback and an opportunity for us to ask questions of city staff who cannot be here this evening. And so that is the reason for the requested postponement to November 7th.
Thank you, Councilor Travers. Is there any additional discussion on the motion to postpone this item to the meeting to our meeting on November 7th? Seeing none, then we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion to postpone action on this item until our November 7th meeting, please say aye.
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 Any opposed, please say no. The motion passes unanimously, and this item will come back to us at our first meeting in November, which brings us to the last item on our agenda, 7.05, on our deliberative agenda, 7.05, which is a vote on a hearing regarding Orlando's Bar and Lounge outdoor entertainment permit. Councilor Shannon, I was hoping you could provide the council, particularly the many of us who are not on the license committee, with a brief overview, and then if you can go to a motion.
You'd like
Please.
me to give the overview first and then?
Either way, whichever way, either one.
Okay, I'll make the motion and then I'll just
Okay.
ask for the floor back after the
Okay.
second. If that's okay. I move to accept the recommendation from the License Committee to hold a hearing regarding the sworn complaint made against Orlando's Bar and Lounge alleging violations of its entertainment permit, and to schedule the hearing on Monday, October 24th, 2022, during the regular city council meeting.
Great. A motion is made by Councilor Shannon, seconded by Councilor McGee. So we'll go back to you, Councilor Shannon, for that overview.
Thank you, President Paul. This is an establishment that has had some trouble for many years in terms of having complaints and some issues that that preceded my tenure on the License Committee, which I'm now in my second year on the License Committee. I remember the prior chair raising an issue about this establishment and concern about approving a license. We have had complaints. I went down to the establishment myself and witnessed the behavior myself, warned them. We've continued to have complaints, and for that reason, I don't think, we don't want to go into the merits of this at this point, because this is just to warn the hearing where they should have the opportunity to, all parties get to tell their sides. But the process here is that the council would hold a hearing and hear from both sides and decide how we want to adjudicate this issue. The one thing I will say is I actually had been pushing to have this hearing as soon as possible. I think we now know we might have a very busy October 24th agenda, and if there was a desire by councilors to have this hearing on, or by you, President Paul, to have this hearing on November 7th, I also think that that would be fine. Give us more time and give the establishment more warning as well.
Thank you, Councilor Shannon. We are going to have a number of items on our agenda for October 24th. At the License Committee, I thought we wanted to do it on the 24th, but if you don't believe that it will be a hindrance to the establishment or to the person who has, to the complainant, then we can amend that to, would you prefer to, maybe we should have that on giving them a little bit more time. If you want to change your motion.
I think we've now established we do have friendly amendments, so I will offer a friendly amendment to change that date to November 7th.
Okay,
If
and it's
amenable to the seconder.
right. It's been such a long time since we've done this, so I think the idea is that is it amenable to the seconder? It is amenable to the seconder. So we'll go with the the meeting on November 7th. Are there any other additional comments that anyone wishes to make on this motion?
Yes.
Yes, Councillor Jang.
Quick question about, the nature of the complaints and also who made it, who more details about this, because it seems I have no idea.
Sure.
I do want to be careful about, I don't know how much detail we should go into without having the hearing and without having the parties present, but the nature of the complaint is a noise complaint. It's about extending beyond what their permit allows them to do in terms of hours, and the complainant is a neighbor.
Okay. Yep. And in this case, do we send a private investigator, or how does it work? What's the process like?
The process, we don't have the attorney that we had at the subcommittee here for this meeting, but it is kind of I would describe it as a quasi-judicial process. So it's a very formal process where we hear from both sides.
All right. Thank.
And I think with that type of process, we shouldn't be engaging with either party in advance of that.
Yep. And this is just for my learning and growth, and was wondering if those who are in the license committee can investigate themselves, because I heard somebody went there to assess the situation. Is it allowed? And I just want to understand the whole premises.
I went in the spring, not related to the most recent incident. And yes, we're allowed to talk to establishments and remind them that their permit for entertainment and outside consumption has now expired, and they need to, I think that's preferable to going through a quasi-judicial process, but when that doesn't work, we end up in a more formal process. So just wanted, this isn't the first time. There's been a lot of work that's preceded this.
Thank you for clarifying.
Thank you so much, Councillor Jang. We'll go to Councillor Bergman, then we're going to need to, we're getting to the magic hour.
Just as the former prosecutor of these things, and having gone to a Superior Court and the Vermont Supreme Court on a quasi-judicial hearing in front of this body, it's really important that we act as independent, impartial judges in this matter, that we do not do investigations of this this complaint, and that we gather and have entered into evidence all of the evidence that is gathered that's relevant, and that we do that within a hearing, and to the extent to which this is something that the establishment has due process rights, so that requires proper notice and an opportunity to be heard and an opportunity to have a counsel. So the extension is a really wise thing with that regard, and I just would caution all of us to stay away from this until you hear it in front of you, and hopefully our attorneys will. There will be an attorney to act if necessary, to bring the prosecution and an attorney that will act as our counsel, and that there be the appropriate walls between them so that no attorney or any of us ends up so none of us end up in Superior Court defending the actions of this. It's kind of a pain, but.
Thank you for those words of advice. If there are no other comments from the council, we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the motion as made by Councilor Shannon, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, please say no. So that means the motion passes, and unanimously we will have a hearing not at our next meeting, but the meeting after on November 7th, and the parties will also be notified of that. That completes our deliberative agenda. We are now at 10:35, so we would need to make a motion to suspend our rules, and if we are to complete the rest of our agenda, which is the committee reports, general city affairs, and then updates from the mayor. Is there anyone who wishes to make a motion to suspend our rules? Okay. Then, without further ado, that brings us to the end of our agenda. I will ask for a motion to adjourn, made by Councilor Hightower, seconded by Councilor McGee. All those in favor of the motion to adjourn, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned at 10:35, and thank you for joining us this evening. Our next meeting is next Monday on October 24th. Have a good week, and we'll see you in a week.